Are you leaving?
Yes.
This health board, do you think, discussed a number of options this evening? Could you enumerate some of those options?
Well, I think what we discussed was whether we just have a recommendation to the the county legislature, or whether we go to the municipalities. But I think the idea of encouraging a moratorium to put a hold on the construction of wind towers until we can get some proper standards in place. The standards they have at the moment are a mishmash of things. But I think there are some really good standards that have been instituted by Rhode Island, and there are very good proven standards that are in place in Europe, and we need to look at those standards.
And you know that the World Health Organization has similar standards.
Yes, I do. And the standards are out there. To say that there is nothing here that we can go with is nonsense. And we need to stand up, and we need to stand up for our population and protect them. That's what our job is as the Board of Health is to do. I did my medical school at King's College Hospital in London, England, and I finished my residency at St Michael's Hospital in Toronto, Ontario, and I was in practice in Ontario until 1995. And then I moved down to Chautauqua County in 95 as an obstetrician gynecologist. But I've also been medical director at the hospital since 1998. And after I closed my practice, they asked me if I would stay on as part-time medical director. And I have a son who lives in Switzerland. I have a brother who's still in practice in radiology in England. So I keep in contact with what's going on elsewhere.
We'll begin as usual with the privilege of the floor. As an individual, 5 minutes if you're speaking for a group. So we'll open the floor. Please give your name and address.
My name is Evan Davis. I live in the town of Villanova. I am a registered nurse with a bachelor's in nursing science. I have degrees in education and math and science. I have experience in healthcare from intensive care, emergency room, med surg, and mental health rehab. A lot of the statements regarding the, I'm speaking on behalf of members of the town of Villanova. Many of the facts and discussions have been a lot of conjecture, and I wanted to just present a few facts that I found in some of my research. First of all, this is from OSHA, the Occupational Safety and Health Administration. Section 1910.95 states, if an employee is exposed to equal or to or greater than 85 decibels in an 8-hour period, the employer must develop a monitoring program. OSHA goes on to state that sound exposure is cumulative. Of course, this is speaking of occupational, but it's relative, it's sound-based. The acoustics memorandum from RES states that computer software by a company in Canada was used to generate their noise assessment. And I quote from there, sound levels are expected to have a maximum of 107.5 decibels. Predicted sound levels at residence are expected to range from 19 to 47 dBA, less than the noise limit of 50, the limit specified by the town of Hanover. Just note the terms predicted and estimated. I've been checking with a handheld decimeter at residence homes in Arkwright, near residence homes I should say, and I have yet to obtain a reading of less than 50. Currently, there is no plan to confirm readings after construction or what they will do if these readings are exceeded. 107 decibels. To put that into perspective, a freight train passing the platform creates 100 decibels. A jet plane 3 miles from takeoff creates 90. So we're subjecting these residents to a greater decibel reading 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. The TDS for the Vestas 136 3.45, which is the turbine that they're proposing to use, does not provide a dBA in the technical data. It states, quote, noise modes depend on site and country. pretty broad. Another interesting fact of the Vesta data sheet is that this is right from their TDS. The propeller has a 20-year lifespan. RES states that their project is slated to last 25 to 40 years. No account has been made in the setback distance to accommodate for potential propeller failure or for possible ice throw. Again, the Vestas TDS, the technical data sheet states, this model may be equipped with a manual or automated de-icing strategy. As far as what I could find, there was no option on Mr. Lyon's permit application, nor has this been addressed by the Town Board of Villanova. Villanova will be the very first wind farm in the continental United States to use turbines at this height in this concentration. They've been placed at an unprecedented 1,200 feet from residents. We have little information on the health effects of turbines of this size and setback, simply because no one has done this before. No one has been careless enough until now. On September 11th, the Villanova Town Board disregarded a petition signed by 102 individuals, which is 10% of the population, requesting further investigation into the impacts that the height increase will have on residents. Currently in Arkwright, 100 residents, again 10% of the population, are involved in a class action suit citing, and I quote directly from this suit, for damages and nuisances created as a result of turbine noise, flicker, and other health-related issues, as well as property loss of property value. Just some medical facts. The vestibular cochlear nerve in the inner ear is not only responsible for hearing. It's responsible for controlling balance, involuntary eye movements or nystagmus, and is responsible for the symptoms of vertigo, causing nausea and dizziness, such as felt in motion sickness. It's also involved in sleep-wake cycles and has been proved to be associated with maintaining blood pressure at different body positions, such as orthostatic hypotension. We're seeing drastic increase in these symptoms in the Arkwright area, and they don't respond well to medication because it is from an environmental source. At a recent forum held by Senator Ott, Dan Stapleton, the director of the Niagara County Board of Health, stated, "It should not be incumbent upon the residents to prove that turbines are unsafe." I just ask that as members of this board, that you realize that you have a responsibility to secure the life and health of those in Chautauqua County. Please do not let our town, our families, or our loved ones become a statistic in a human experiment. We will not fully understand the impacts this project will have on our health and safety until it's too late. Prevention is our only option. Thank you.
Is there anyone else? Lynn?
Hi, my name is Lynn Bedford. I live on Cable Road in the town of Arkwright. And I've been here before and I've spoken before this committee. July 17th, we took in a young man. He's 33 years old and he's blind. We took him in to care for him. He had no place to stay. About a month ago, he complained that he was getting very agitated and that he really didn't know much about infrasound or wind turbines or anything like that. As I said, he's totally 100% blind. So we said, well, we talked about it and we came to the conclusion that that was the only thing that had changed in his life. So he's decided to go stay with some of our friends on Dean Road. And a few days later, he called us up and he said, "Do you think I could stay in your basement? We have a few rooms down there. We raised 7 kids in this house, so we've got bedrooms everywhere." But he came back 2 weeks ago, and he has stayed in our basement, which is a 10-foot deep basement. My husband wanted to take a 2x4 and turn it over 30 years ago when we built the house, so that's why it's so deep. He said he has had no complaints until he comes upstairs. And now he started to get a ringing in his ears. And that's how it all started with me. Was the day after the turbines were turned on, September 8th of last year, my ears started to ring. And they've never stopped. My ears are ringing right now as I'm speaking with you.
Me too.
I asked this committee, you are my health board. As a member of Chautauqua County, I ask you, please take this seriously. This isn't about birds being killed. That's serious enough. This isn't about animals. This is about human beings. You know, there's so many repercussions that are going on. My neighbors want to move now. They said, we just don't even want to deal with it anymore. We can move to Pennsylvania. We can move here or there. I don't want to move. This is my home. I've put my life into it. So thank you for listening.
Thank you. Does anyone else want
Can
to
I ask
speak
a
to the
question?
board? Okay.
Well, I'm Barry Bedford. This is my wife, Lynn. What kind of teeth does this board have? What can you do? Just make recommendations? The World Health Organization makes recommendations. You don't have to follow them. This is the health board.
You want
That's
to
my only
answer?
question. What can be done? Send them letters?
On this time?
Make recommendations?
Ooh. Oh, our lawyer is here. Hi, Lynn.
We refer to our legal counsel.
I would assume she's probably gonna have to do some research
Yeah, I
on
mean,
this
the
subject.
question's a little broad.
to-
What can be done?
Organization.
What can be done is a broad question because, you know, you're asking in general, you're referring to the World
Okay,
Health
we
Organization.
know there's a problem. What can be done to fix it?
Well,
I can only speak to this board, and this board has the power to make recommendations and to work with the legislature, to work with local government entities. We oversee the enforcement of the local sanitary codes and so.
Health, that's health, right?
We make recommendations for local laws to the county legislature, and then it's up to the county legislature to act on our recommendations for any local laws. Such as when the board acted to put forth legislation to increase the age to purchase tobacco and electronic cigarette products to 21. The board in and of itself didn't have the power to make that happen. We had to make the recommendation to the legislature for a local law to be passed for that to happen, and that local law was passed. We were the second county in New York State to do that at the time. But most of the things that the board has the power to do is through recommendations to the legislature. In an instance like this, I believe, we're a home rule state, so you're talking about, individual municipalities, whether it's Arkwright or Villanova. And I believe the way the wind turbine laws and that are currently written is that the local municipality that really is who is in charge.
town government is what we were hearing at the forum, yes.
Yes, the town government really is who bears the brunt of the responsibility to make sure this has happened right. As far as public health goes, we've taken a stance that there is not a complete review process, environmental impact review process on wind turbines. And we have gone to the state and asked and written several letters from this board, from all local health departments across the state through the New York State Association of County Health Officials, that be changed, because there needs to be a full SEQR review done on these projects, and that currently doesn't exist. That's what we don't know. There isn't good research there.
The whole thing, if I may, the whole thing is the distance to where people live. If the setback is 1,200 feet and they put a tower 1,300 feet from your home, you're going to be affected.
Right.
So there has to be a rule, a law, whatever, that you can't get any closer than 1.5 miles, which is recommended in Europe and all over this country, places too, that the setback shouldn't be any closer than that.
Maybe a little off topic. Have you talked with your local legislators in those areas?
Yes,
I mean-
George Burrell, I guess, would be the closest one.
Well, George is the county executive, but you have a legislator for your area.
Who would that be?
Yes, I've written letters.
I don't know off the top of my head, I'd have to look to see who it is for Villanova and Arkwright. be some political pressure here too.
Let me comment. We're going to come back to this topic on the agenda under item 5. And there's a summary of the forum that was held on September 10th in your packet. So we're going to come back to this at that point. I do want to comment that I did attend the forum, as did George Burlow.
And us.
And yes, and I rode up with Mark and Michelle Twitchell, and also in the car with the Bedfords. So let me just say in response to what can we do legally? I wrote a note to myself on the multiple pages of notes that I took during the conference, and it's a summary of these notes that are in your packets. But I have this little note to myself: ask Steve Abdella what the county health department and board of health can do. I have not spoken with our county attorney, Mr. Abdella, yet, but I intend to do that.
Well,
Yeah,
we have Lynn, so
I know, yeah,
in reality,
right.
she said we'll go.
But
to-
there's
she doesn't
nothing,
know public.
there's nothing to keep this board from making a recommendation if there's enough evidence for us to make a recommendation. What's done with it, what the legislature done with us, is out of our hands in a sense until there's enough political pressure, but there's nothing to say that we can't come up with a recommendation if we feel it's appropriate. I know in previous meetings, we've talked about the distance. The distance, but that isn't to say that it couldn't be overridden by the towns, I guess, because they're the town boards, isn't that correct? That are making the approvals in the different municipalities. That's the way I think I understand it.
That's true, and I think when we get to item 5,
Yeah.
I think there are a couple of strong recommendations that we can make that came out of this forum.
Oh, good.
And
Well,
one of
that's
them is
helpful.
distance, and another one is the town board. It's crucial that the town boards make decisions before they are approached by the wind farm. There's an
That's
analogy
right.
here with
Have a policy
fracking, if
in
you
place or
recall.
whatever.
That, it's better for a town board to make decisions and set rules before they are approached for wind projects, rather than after. So we'll get to that.
One more public comment.
Yes.
Karen Engstrom, Mayville. There have been precedents set on recommendations from health boards. In Iowa and in Wisconsin, health boards have asked for a moratorium until an adequate study could be done. In fact, they've demanded it in other places in Europe and other areas. A moratorium simply means that you stop doing what the health board said. We have to have a moratorium, we have to stop this. The people complained to Nova, which is represented by one person here tonight, who is talking about what's happened in Europe, has made this decision, has been 3 members on that town. The 4th member owns a town, and that's, so 3 people are making the decision for that town. Seems logical. A moratorium could be declared. There is a lawsuit in that town. And we're seeing what that town has asked for is 600-foot tall turbines. The only other 600-foot tall turbines in the United States, and there's only one of them, and it's in Mayville, is 3,352 feet from a home. The ones here will be 1,200 feet from a home. It's a big difference. There has never been anything like this, and these people will be subjected to cumulative effects because Arkwright is already affecting health. The people in Villanova can see them and feel them because they're within a certain range. And when you add another group of turbines, and then Casadega Wind is already beginning to be constructed, the cumulative health effects will be seen. So
Yes.
asking for a moratorium by a health board, it has been done and can be done.
Karen, you mentioned that a moratorium has been asked for by a number of health boards. What happened when they asked for a moratorium?
Well, and
Was
surely-
one
yes.
put in place?
2 of them. There they were small projects, but they were affecting people. It took 10 years before the health board.
Okay, seeing no one, we'll move on to item 2, approval of minutes from the July 18th meeting. You have those in your packets.
So move they
Motion to
approve, or second, I will second.
Motion to approve as written.
Thank you.
Moved and seconded, any discussion? Please, seeing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Okay, motion carried, the minutes are approved. Agenda item 3, a variance request, that is also in your packets.
I guess you notice in your packet, we have a variance request from Mr. Robert Bender, who lives on Kinetone Road in Jamestown, town of Kinetone. He did write us this written request that you have in your packet. He is asking to connect a new garage apartment to his existing septic system. The purpose is to accommodate his mother and father-in-law by building a garage apartment for them to reside in, so he and his wife can help to take care of them. Our sanitarian, Austin Wellman, has gone out and looked over this and looked at the plans. They are going to, if this is approved, install a new 1,500-gallon tank with an effluent filter, run a line of Schedule 40 to the existing distribution box to serve the proposed garage apartment. Sanitarian Wellman, and along with Environmental Health Director Stowe, have recommended that the board approve the variance request. There are conditions that are listed in your packet. That is obtaining a local zoning and code approval to construct and place the 2 dwellings on the parcel, and obtain a permit from us to install the septic tank and such. And it's understood that the garage apartment is not to be used for a future rental, and that the disposal system will operate and maintain at all times to the satisfaction of our department.
Thank you, Christine. Any discussion on this?
We've done this
Yes.
many times.
We've done
Seems a
this.
reasonable request.
Yeah, I think in this case, putting in a whole new septic tank for that
It's
is
a positive.
admirable, really, because when I first read this, I thought, gee, they may not even have to do that, but it was their suggestion to do it, the homeowner's suggestion to do it, so I think it's good.
I move we accept the recommendation of the
I second.
sanitary.
It's been moved and seconded to accept this. Any discussion?
Yeah, how are we to assure that this will never be used as a rental in the
Yeah,
future? I mean, there's no way for us to enforce that. It obviously doesn't really matter very much, but in the past, what we've done is we've put a moratorium on the use. Once the aging parents either go to a nursing home or pass on, this is to be terminated. I think in this case, though, he's putting in such a large system, it really is irrelevant if they could handle it as a way they want.
I think so too, yeah. Any further discussion items? Okay, we have a motion. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion is carried. Much in the news these days. Interesting article in the Post-Journal this morning from the owner of a vape shop, giving his perspective. New York State ban on flavored e-cigarettes.
Yeah, I really thought we needed to add this to the agenda since everything's out there in the news at the current time. The emergency ban by the governor did not include menthol or tobacco. So it really is the flavored e-cigarettes. And that really is what we've been seeing the most of in our schools and in use by children and teenagers especially. So we do applaud the work of the governor on that one. But the New York State Association of County Health Officials
And along with the whole list of people that you have in your letter in your packet, there's a lot of different organizations that are also asking that it also be amended to include all flavored e-cigarettes, including menthol. I don't know whether or not that'll happen. At the same time, there is pending legislation in the state Capitol, Senate and Assembly bill that would prohibit the same sale. The governor's ban really is only in effect for 90 days, and it can be extended, but I feel that he did this immediately to get to the point where the state legislature will reconvene and take action on the bill that's already pending. So at the same time, Chairman Paul Wendell of our county legislature has a motion in front of the legislature to support the adoption of the bill at the state level. And last night, Human Services Committee, we did talk about that. And there was verbal support. There was no vote that needs to be taken, but by the Human Services Committee in support of the motion for the legislature to send this resolution in support of the legislation.
That doesn't include the menthol then?
The way that it's written right now that PJ, or Chairman Wendell has proposed, is the exact way that the Senate bill and Assembly bills are written. And right now, they include just flavored.
Okay, right. Just double checking.
That's what that increases. I wanted to bring it to the board because there again, the Board of Health does have the ability to make recommendations. So if you want to go in support of the ban, that is something that you as the board can do, and if you choose to increase that to menthol or tobacco.
There's one other issue, which isn't included in this. These 400 or so cases of people with very severe lung disease does not, it's CBD and THC.
It's nothing to do with
It's lipids in there that
They're
become
not included
volatile
in this,
and
right.
cause a
Exactly.
lipophilic pneumonia, and these
That's
people
right.
are really sick.
Really, really sick.
And I don't know why we're not including that in here as well.
The thing is,
Well, maybe the
once
governor didn't
once
already have-
somebody
I think
has
that's
bought
already-
the apparatus to do vaping, you're not stopping them getting the other stuff illegally. And as Dr. Burke has said,
No.
the ones that have died are because they're using other stuff in them,
Right.
especially vitamin E oils mixed
That's
in
right.
with THC.
That's right.
Yes.
And CBD as
And
well.
CBD.
And the legislation that's at the state and even the emergency regulations that just came down really don't address that at all.
Not at all.
I really see this as an attempt to make e-cigarettes less attractive to young people.
Mhm.
So it really isn't addressing any of the THC.
I mean, maybe it's a
or
first step or something.
Any of that
look at it
that's
that way, I don't know.
included.
Basically, you can get 6 deaths from
And-
vaping, but you can get 10,000 deaths from guns and nothing happens.
Yeah, I was gonna say something like that,
Get
but
like,
I let it
still, what
go,
is-
thanks.
500,000 a year
Yeah.
with tobacco, with regular cigarettes, so. Alright. So, I just
That's
wanted to bring that to
complicated.
your attention, and
Was
your
it
packet
menthol
is
and mint? That's what I remember reading, but I don't know if that's.
menthol.
Just menthol. I thought they were still allowing menthol and mint flavored.
I think they're including mint
It's
as
just
federal.
menthol.
It says
Isn't it
menthol.
menthol?
Yeah, just
Okay.
federally, it's
They just-
menthol.
I think menthol is a
Yeah.
mint flavor, isn't it, kind
Yeah.
of, sort of?
Yeah.
In a way, yeah.
Yeah.
Makes no sense.
None of this thing really makes any sense. I
I
mean,
think
once again, there was no research done and no approval, so we have, again,
Why do you
a
want
policy going out
research
before
before you do it?
science.
Do you realize it's illegal for the CDC to research gun deaths?
Yes, I do realize that. I know that.
Well, their funding has been removed too.
It's
But you
been-
can't do
It's
it.
been
You
that way
can't do it.
for years and years.
Yep.
So I don't know if you've had a chance to read through the motion that's going before the legislature next week. I don't know if it's something that the board would like to lend support to. There's also, you have the ability to make your support anything you want. The letter that went to Commissioner Zucker from all the various agencies, including most of the public health organizations across the state, including the State Association of County Health Officials, which I belong to, is asking that the menthol be included.
Was there an explanation about why it wasn't included?
No.
Probably somebody in the legislature uses it.
Yeah.
Well,
I guess I'm wondering.
Well, it's a flavor, so why?
Well, I don't know, but my guess is
wouldn't
that they
it be?
don't see it as that way. I think traditionally, the argument was that menthol cigarettes were introduced as a way to make it less impactful on the lungs in terms of when you're inhaling.
Yeah, that's a terrific idea.
Yeah, which basically increases the use of the product too. And then hence the, many years ago, well, I won't go through all the brands, but the brands with menthol in it were the #1 selling brands because menthol was effective
Tasted like medicine, right?
in making it easier to inhale.
yeah.
So it might be simply that they didn't view it as a flavor
Right.
like the rest of the products. that
Bubblegum
they
and
use.
strawberry and all the other flavors that are out there. I can tell you that vaping is a huge issue in our schools, huge issue in our schools. Something's gotta be done about it.
Well, anything that you can do that will reduce the kids starting vaping helps.
Well,
But it's
right.
rather like shutting the door after the horse is bolted.
It's the-
You know, they should have done the research before it went out there.
Yes. Yeah.
Learn from the original tobacco products.
God
issues.
forbid they learn from something.
Yeah, well.
Look how many years we had a governmental regulation on that, and here they
Yeah.
really jump real quick. Interesting.
Well, and what we're seeing so much with the kids vaping, especially, I mean, they can vape right in school, and no one knows they're vaping. You know, it's not like pulling a cigarette out, and if one person in this room smoked, we'd all smell it and know it. You know, and that vaping isn't like that. And the little jewel cartridges, you know, they hide right in their hoodie, you know, and smoke it right in class, in the bathrooms.
But
It's-
I've seen on television, these clouds of vapor surround people's heads. And how can they do this and not exhale and
You'd be,
make-
you'd be
yeah,
amazed
make
what
it
these kids,
obvious?
what these
Figure it
kids
out.
can do. And there is as much nicotine in one of those jewel tight pack cartridges as there is in 20 cigarettes.
Well,
So when we wanna talk about really that developing brain and the addiction that's gonna come along with that, with nicotine, it's sinful, in my opinion.
Well, they interviewed one kid on TV who'd been vaping nicotine, and he got to the point where he was so addicted he had to leave class halfway through to go and vape.
Is there secondary smoke similarity here with vaping?
No one knows,
Nobody knows, and there's no research
no-
done on it.
no research.
The only thing you don't have is the hot burning 5,000 different additives in the, the regular cigarettes, but you're getting a high dose of nicotine, which is highly addictive. And then you have the, whatever else they're smoking, that's the problem. They're not using those things just to smoke bubble gum. I can guarantee you that a lot of other stuff, and that's why you're seeing these kids getting deathly ill, because of the volatile, oils and whatever else, that this thing really heats them up and in they go.
It's easier basically for people to make their own product and sell it than it is, just getting some old-fashioned tobacco and processing it. So it's just like a lot of other illicit drugs in the community. People buy it from, they can buy it legally, but they can also get other products mixed in, and that's what's popular with people. You get THC that's not produced by a legal company. You get THC that's made in somebody's house.
At least with fentanyl these days. It's scary. Used to be able to say, oh, marijuana won't kill you.
No, you don't know.
Yeah, one thing that we were looking into is the possession law. And it's very old in the county, so that could be something that we could look at. For instance, if a parent provides alcohol to a minor, the parent is also found
Liable.
liable for, you know, for doing that. That doesn't work that way right now with tobacco or electronic cigarettes.
Well, that's a good thought, though.
And if there had to be some other accountability held here for the kids and for the parents, maybe that would help us to do something as far as enforcement of the laws.
You're pushing a very big rock uphill.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
I'm always
Turn on
pushing a very
TV
big
and
rock.
then there's Juul. I mean, cigarettes aren't allowed to be advertised. You turn this on, they're advertising
It's unbelievable,
nicotine
isn't it?
products, Juul, whatever else they call them. The different, and it's just there, people,
Yeah.
oh,
Well,
and so now
yeah.
he's can sit in the house with me.
Isn't it
I
awful?
used to never see my husband, now I see him.
How many years did it take to get where we got to with nicotine and big tobacco? And we are literally starting all over again.
Because they're not
You're darn right.
stupid. They know what
There'll
their
always be
business
something,
is.
that's the bad part.
No, most of them have been bought out by big tobacco companies.
That's right.
Because they know exactly where it's going.
Mhm.
But Chris, I'm not a big fan of, when you talk about possession laws, I'm not a big fan of criminalizing, it's been, it doesn't really make that much difference. People, even the illegal drugs, people are using them.
Right.
So as a prevention measure, I don't know that making something illegal is effective.
Well,
There are more effective ways to address it in
Yeah,
terms of
and
preventing.
we
but
have a
not just
toolkit.
with possession laws.
Well, we have a toolkit actually, and I didn't include it, that Bree got a hold of for us, where actually it's used in the schools as enforcement, but it's not criminalization, it's community service and other things that it's, I wish I could remember the name, I'm going to have to send it out to you after the meeting. It's been an evidence-based, proven strategy in working with kids.
I'd like to read that, see what okay.
So, just,
Well, it seems to me that we should consider supporting this motion that is going before our legislature in a week. If somebody would like to make a motion to that effect.
guess not.
Guess not. Okay.
So, I mean, that's fine.
Pardon me?
That's okay. If the board doesn't want to lend their support to this motion, then that's okay.
I tend to agree that it should include menthol in the flavoured cigarette.
Yeah.
Well, we could do that. Oh, you could.
I'll make a motion.
I'll make a motion that
You
we
can do
support
it.
it with the addition of adding menthol.
Yeah, I'll second that one.
All right. Everyone understand the motion? It's support of the legislature motion with the understanding that it include menthol.
So we're gonna write a letter of support.
Are you directing me to write a letter of support?
I don't direct anybody, I would ask you to,
Are you asking me to
write a letter of support, yes.
Well, however you give
Yeah.
information to the legislature, I
that's
don't know,
usually-
maybe it's a telegram.
Well, that's usually how, we'll draft a letter
Wouldn't it
and
be a
send it
tweet?
to Mr.
Yeah,
Erlandson.
really.
and-
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd just make a suggestion, echoing on what you said earlier. The letter from the entities to Howard Zucker, which is, I think, partway through the packet that we were given,
Mhm.
they're making a distinction between menthol and mint. I suspect that's because that's what the state's doing. So if you want both included, I would just say
With
phrase
the
it that
addition
way.
of menthol and that.
A letter to Commissioner Zucker, is that,
No, I'm
I
saying
see.
phrase it as menthol and mint.
okay,
not
Menthol
just
and
menthol.
mint. So-
Yeah,
all right,
yes.
Yes.
okay. Menthol and
Just a
mint, even
suggestion,
though
you don't
they're
have to.
essentially the same thing, right?
Yes, but as lawyers
Apparently
do,
they're
we
two.
say and then we say the same thing again. But
Yeah.
if we echo what they're saying, I think it will just,
Right.
make the impact that you.
Okay.
As one who used to teach botany, I can say that the genus of mint is mentha, so, but anything to clarify, that would be good.
I can see the legislature would figure, know what that is, but anyway,
Yeah,
we'd have to put something in parentheses.
yeah, okay. Does everyone understand what we're gonna be doing
Because
here?
that's science.
All right. Call the question, all in favor, please say aye. Opposed, nay. Okay, carried, thank you. Let's see, item 5, E, that is in your packets. 2 or 3 pages that are titled Excerpts from Speakers' Presentations, Health Impacts of Industrial Wind Projects. And these are excerpts that I typed up from my notes during the forum.
There is enough evidence out there that there is obviously significant health damage from wind turbines. And I think, and it hasn't been studied properly. And I think that the suggestion of a moratorium makes a lot of sense until it is studied properly. And if we can make that to the legislature, I think that would be in our power. Whether they will do anything with the suggestion of a moratorium is another thing, but I think that's far better than just saying, well, we don't think it's a good idea to have them. Say, we're recommending a moratorium.
Let me ask what sounds like a dumb question. Why would the legislature not support what we just suggested? What is, I'm not aware of many public comments, maybe I should be more aware, by legislators that are explaining what their position is. Is there among the current legislator a lot of support that ignores the concerns that we've heard in the last few meetings?
I want to ask a dumber question.
Yeah.
On your question.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the legislature, we send this to the legislature, which I think we're all in agreement this is not a bad idea. What power does the legislature have to deal with local municipalities
This is the
that have
individual
within their
municipalities.
purview to do whatever they darn well please?
Yeah.
I don't know, I'm just asking
Yeah,
that
yeah.
because
That's a good point.
our legislature, unless there is a tsunami of support from all the legislatures around the state and all of the municipalities to put a moratorium on this until we understand what's going on, we may be, 10 years, as Karen said, before
Yeah.
anything gets done.
Yeah.
By that time, these things are all over the place.
Tom, question from the floor?
Yes, I'm sorry, yes.
Well, it was sort of a comment. I don't have it right in front of me, but I was just reading it today for the first time. I believe it was DWA, the Department of Wind Association, I believe it was, and they made a statement that with this new law that was signed by Governor Cuomo, there will be incentives to towns that adopt this wind program. So there's going to be massive influx of reimbursement from the state. And I can just speak on behalf of the town of Villanova. The reason that they are increasing this height was because of a higher megawatt production. If they can have a higher megawatt, they get a larger tax reimbursement. They have a smaller area of land to work with, so trying to maximize their reimbursement dollar is the goal here. And as was stated earlier, the board consists of 3 members who are making this statement, or making the decision for about 1,080 people in the township. So there's huge financial incentive to that legislative board of 3 people, where there is some. One has 3 turbines on her property, so she rescinded herself. But that was just a comment, some research that I found just today, actually. And it's really not publicly known. The public is not aware of what is really at heart of this project.
It always comes down to money.
But can I ask a question? There are other places that I've seen where there are popular movements to remove public officials. There's a mechanism for doing that, isn't that? If enough people in that community feel that they're not acting, these efforts to remove governors, whatever else, is there not a possibility in New York State to remove these people if you feel they're not acting on your behalf?
There would be a few different remedies, and I think they would depend on the town charters and whatnot. Are you asking if there's a higher level, like at the county level? Can we take
I don't know, I'm
town
just
folk out?
asking if in New York State that, it's a phenomenon you see in western states where they have these mechanisms.
Like referendums
Yes,
or
right, yes,
votes of no
referendum-
confidence?
Or referendums to remove a public official. And if they get a certain number of votes, they can then put it to a vote again. Now, I don't know how these officials on that board are elected or put in that position. It sounds like at least 10% of your population are in direct disagreement with the decisions they're making. One has a conflict of interest, it sounds like. Why isn't there some effort being made to remove these people or to put people on the board who are going to act in the best interest of that community? Because that may be a solution, at least. We know what happens. The Brinks truck rolls up, parks in front of some farm, oh, that's a nice, and they roll out a wad of cash, and there you've got your first wind turbine. And then they just keep doing this. And it's very tough in these days with, if you talk to any farmer, what it's like being a farmer these days, to not have an eye, it's an eye opener when someone comes in and offers you that kind of money.
My understanding is that the landowner gets about $30,000 a year for having a wind turbine on their land.
Is it that much?
I have an addition. We're not seeing any law, any court cases, any case law yet, because this is a Wild West. This is a wind rush, like a gold rush. Case law is being established. Right now in Villanova, you've got Article 78, which is a lawsuit by 18 people there. And based on the fact that the planning board of this county has said no twice to the Villanova, if this lawyer can actually gather enough material, like a health board saying, we request a moratorium based on the health concerns that we have, these things all mount up to build case law. And this case will be the first that will be possibly have some effect on what's happening in Chautauqua County. Our legislature has unanimously voted in favor of the resolution put forward by the Erie County Legislature opposing wind turbines in Lake Erie. So that says your entire legislature has a position in opposition to turbines. So anything you bring to them, they may embrace and welcome, because
I
that's
just thought
what
that'd be
their
better in
position
the lake
is.
than in somebody's backyard.
But we're seeing legislature and executive, the town board being the executive, doing nothing in the state legislature, and seeing that now it's going to the courts, and the courts may actually have an effect, but it's going to take influence from many places like health boards.
Do we know why they're not putting them 1.5 miles away from homes? I mean, is there a reason they're
They make more money
concentrating them
because they're
so
closer together.
close?
The more they can put in a smaller piece
To
of
do with
land,
density and the number they can build. If you have to put it 1.5 miles away from somebody's home, and there's a lot of people's homes up there, you run out of areas where you can put them, quote, legally or whatever the case may be. And I don't understand why they won't put them in the lake, because then there's nobody living on the lake. Stick them a couple of miles out in the lake. Huh?
I think that's what Cape Cod was gonna do, wasn't it? They
Yeah.
put it out on
Put 'em
the.
That's
on a
what they've
big
done all
pier
the way
and-
around Europe, off the North Sea coast of Holland and Denmark, and all around the Kent coast. They've got them in the sea. They don't bother anybody on the land then.
Well, there are issues with the lake too, of course, but to me, the lake is one thing because of what you suggest. There's nobody living out there. And number two, the health issues are land-based. And, the dilemma to me here is, and I don't want to get political, but, this push for green energy that's coming from our governor and elsewhere in the country as well. This is, people don't think beyond that, and green energy is good, and that's where the thinking stops. And I think the issue here is to make people aware that, yes, green energy has its pluses, but this is a very serious negative side of this type of green energy. We had a discussion coming back from the forum in our car, and there were a couple of things that I learned that were rather disturbing to me. One, of course, is that the Sierra Club, pushing for green energy, thinks wind energy is great. So here we have a national organization pushing it. Number two, of even more concern, was that our local county League of Women Voters is behind wind energy for the same reason, because it's green energy. And I think that the word has to get out to our League of Women Voters.
But
and
you know,
inform
it's
them.
not free. It costs money to build the things, and they also break down. And then when they break down, they're almost impossible to repair. Look at the 3 ones we got on the thruway. How long did they last before they broke down?
The other thing is this area uses so much hydropower, and you know, and we had an extension now of the use of hydropower. That's green, and I still think we could consider a recommendation that at least says things like recognizing that there are health effects in individuals living near turbines. I don't understand why we can't say it is recommended that they be so far. I recognize they want to put them in close density, and then they run against houses, but can't we do that?
You have a moratorium until the thing is studied in closer detail, better detail, because they really haven't done any studies. Put a hold on it for the time being until it's studied properly.
I think you're right, because if you remember that video conferencing that we participated in with folks higher than us, it seemed as though they were not ready to make proper recommendations. And I feel as though it would be wonderful if there could be a recommendation that was based in science and that recognizing the health effects that we have been listening to for a year, you know.
Karen's analogy to it being the Wild West, I think, is a very good one. It is the Wild West of wind turbines.
Yeah.
You know, stick them where you can. You know, people complain, it still doesn't stop them building them.
I want to call your attention to a couple of things in the handout. There are 2 sheets of paper, but there's a back side of sheet 1. So on the front side of sheet 1, under Dr. Jerry Punch, item 3, he referred to various studies, and I want to call your attention to those. You can find these on the internet with the information that's given there. And if you're interested in some of the scientific aspects of this, these would be good references for you. The other thing I want to call your attention to is on the second page. Gary Abraham spoke. He's an attorney, as it points out there. And let's see here. Item 6. 6A, the upstate grid is separate from the downstate grid. The wind towers are upstate. There are no wind towers, and he pointed out specifically that you won't find wind towers in Westchester County. They are all upstate in rural areas, and yet the upstate grid is not only separate from the downstate grid, we are already getting 90% of our energy from green sources, namely water power.
Mm-hmm.
And he considers nuclear green. You may disagree with that individually, but he does. So, you know, his point is that, or his point was that you know, we're paying the price for this up here.
I know. Not fair.
In all of the attributes of our rural living that are being sacrificed. But what I took home from this is on the first page, Jerry Punch, item 9. The industrial wind tower setbacks are not sufficient to protect human health. And you look at what's going on in other countries, 1.5 miles. This is also true in Iowa, for example. 1.5 miles, and we have them a few hundred feet. That's number 1 to me, setbacks. Number 2 is on the second page under Attorney Abraham, get your town to pass a proper wind law. That's where the action, I believe, has to take place, and you do it in advance before they are, the town is approached by this wind energy group. The next day after the conference, I called our town board, town supervisor, and I said, has the town of Carroll been approached? Because we have a ridge, all along. And she said no. So the next board meeting, I'm going to go down, I'm going to make a statement to the board. I haven't written it yet. But I think it's imperative that we approach this from our town board level. So that's my soapbox for the night.
But do you think, Tom, that there's anything the Board of Health should do in regards to number 9 and number 7 then, or not? I mean, obviously, we don't have supervision over these people, but
Well, but you can,
The
if you
town
put a
boards-
moratorium in place, you can encourage
that's right.
the local municipalities to get a wind
To
law
take a-
in effect.
that's,
Maybe
that's true.
the way to get, at least prevent this being a continuing process.
Yeah, it's like a cancer.
That we suggest that the best practice is a moratorium until we have better information to show. The second thing is that towns begin to look at what they're being offered and to have guidelines before they go ahead with these things, yeah. minimum
Setback guidelines
That's right.
and wind
Decibel
laws.
levels.
And, yeah, and that,
I might suggest that we ask Lynn to look into possibilities for the sanitary code. We do have a section on nuisances, and there are certain things that are set aside there as a nuisance. Noxious weeds, one of them,
and
tires.
noise would be
are
another.
abandoned. But I don't know, noise in general, we're open on a whole can of worms for stereos and all of that.
But you could, if you
I
have a
don't know
neighbour that
if
runs
it's-
the music too loud, you can complain to the local police and they can come down
That's right.
and shut them down. Because there is a noise.
Happens in James.
That's right.
The same way as you can't have a muffler that's
The question
not
is,
working.
what way is gonna be the most effective?
Yeah.
But maybe.
Right, I mean, either what we were talking about, the moratorium and with the proper setbacks and if they're gonna think about it and having proper wind laws, or the sanitary code that Chris has mentioned.
Or all.
I
Or all of them.
I mean, the
Oh.
power, really the power of the Board of Health comes through the enforcement of the sanitary code.
Right.
I mean,
Well, that's true, but we can make recommendations for public safety and public
well,
health.
We can.
Certainly.
But when it comes to the sanitary code is for the entire Chautauqua County Health District. And any amendment that the board makes to the sanitary code does have to be approved by the state health department before it can go into effect.
But
But
then all the
that's how-
towns have to abide by the.
It's countywide. And that is how, we were way ahead of the state health department in tattoo and body piercing regulation. We were the only counties that did that, and it took several years for the state now to finally put rules and regulations in place on permitting them. We've had issues with tire burning, tires are now considered in there, so.
So why do you have to have in your sanitary code that it's necessary to separate a well from a septic tank? Why do you have to have that? I mean, it's very obvious why. I'm
Right.
asking a rhetorical question. There's a setback that is built into that distance because it's known that anything coming from that septic tank through that distance of soil, by the
Well,
time it gets to your
right.
well,
Contamination
you can
will
drink the water.
contaminate.
And so, why do we have regulations with respect to the temperature of water in a dishwasher in a restaurant? Because we know less than that, you run the risk of, well, this issue of putting into the sanitary code, noise levels, and, I mean, that's very reasonable in a sense. Now, it may get a little pushback, but I don't, we know that noise levels over a certain amount chronically or constant, not the guy who plays the stereo and you call the cops, that's just annoying. But here you've got 365 days a year, maybe 24 hours a day, maybe 12, depending if the wind's blowing. You're getting a nuisance which can be noxious to individuals. Maybe we should look at amending the sanitary code. Be a little ahead of the game, again.
Excellent suggestion.
But that does take time. I mean, everything here is going to
So
take
it takes time.
I mean, and I guess there could be parallel tracks. The board could consider going the moratorium route as far as a
sure.
local law.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And making that recommendation to of the local law to the county legislature.
And amending the sanitary code.
And then you kind of are passing that ball with your recommendation to the county legislature. On the other end, we could look into an amendment to the sanitary code, and we have to draft that. The
Mhm.
board has to approve it, and then it has to go to the state health department for approval.
Is there evidence that sound over X number of decibels is injurious to your health?
Yes.
Constant sound. If there's evidence of that, then it behooves us to build into our sanitary code that is abated in this county. And it's abated by, obviously, separation or distance. I mean, and that can be, that, we don't have to put that in, but obviously, they have to be able to show that they are not generating that kind of decibel level at the nearest home to them. Obviously, if you're standing beside the thing, you're gonna be getting whatever noise it generates, but I don't see a problem in us using what we already have, which is science, that over 35 decibels at a constant level is considered injurious to health.
Tom, I think I'm right in saying that they've got standards in Europe that they use for these things.
Mhm.
Why can't we adopt their standards or encourage
Right.
the county to adopt those
Right.
standards?
I mean, I sort of hate to shy, I'm gonna go along with anything that we can do to help, but I think we're shying away from the miles or the distance from the property line to the turbine.
We can go both
But-
routes. We can ask for a moratorium until they put standards in place, but we can also ask the legislature to amend the sanitary code.
We don't even have to ask the legislature for that.
We
Just
just
has to
make
get
it.
approved by the
It has to be
New York
They just have to approve
Has
it
to be
later.
approved,
Yeah.
yes.
No, by the state health department.
State health
Not
department.
the county legislature.
All
The
right,
sanitary
so
code is
we
different.
ask the state health department then.
We
to,
draft the,
Mhm.
we draft the amendment, the board votes to approve the amendment, then we send it off to the state health
This could be
department
the
for
shot
approval.
that's heard around the world.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And did you say that there's other noise-related aspects already covered by the sanitary code?
Well, the sanitary code, they're nuisance.
There's a nuisance, but it
Nuisance.
really
Because I'm wondering
isn't.
if somebody at the state level is going to argue whether this meets the definition of sanitary issues.
Oh, it does if it's injurious to health.
So-
If we
Yeah,
have data
there's-
to show that if it's injurious to health,
Okay.
we're
Fine.
well within our
Cherry
right to
pick.
Seems like a good idea.
propose.
You'd have to have data to prove it.
Yes.
So there's data
Yes.
out there by the ton.
So I have two notes here. One, amend the county sanitary code. This requires New York State DOH approval
Mhm.
regarding wind projects and distance setbacks and noise levels. Those two things, distance setbacks and noise levels.
Yes.
Number two, this is the local law passed by the legislature for a moratorium.
Yes.
Does that sum it up?
Do we need to
Until-
specify a length of the
Well,
moratorium?
and I also think something else, that when you talk about the sanitary code, you could go as far as saying that any wind project or whatever you wanna call it must be permitted by the local health department. And add that to the fee schedule, and that way we would have.
Our set of
I
guidelines.
mean, this is a huge.
Yeah,
I don't
of
know
course
what I'm
it's
doing to
huge,
myself.
but that's what
This
you're
is,
doing.
It's a big issue.
because you'd have, to in doing so, it was brought up, how do you know what happens after they're up? No one's watching. So that would mean it would turn into an inspection and enforcement program, just like a restaurant inspection and everything else, is if this is really what we want.
Septic tank.
want to talk about, we could talk about the regulation of wind farms.
Why don't we do it? I like that.
That's a whole lot bigger than a nuisance. Just saying. That's-
But you have to get the regulations in place.
Yeah, you know, as, just as, you know, no one can put in a private septic system without
That's it,
our
right.
approval.
We just went through that
earlier.
No one could
Septic
open a
system.
restaurant without being,
No, yeah.
meeting inspection.
Yeah.
It has to be
Reasons
licensed.
for that.
And really, what it comes down to, it has to be in the essence of protecting
Health.
public
health.
not
Yeah. Of course.
individual health. 'Cause
Yes, right,
that's not
public
our
health.
job.
No,
Our
public
job
health.
is overall
Right.
public health.
Right.
So that's,
It's, you know, it's, Chris, it's fascinating to me that these companies that, you know, put them up here probably have tried to do more in the downstate, but they haven't been approved. So,
I think you're being very, very, very kind to them. I think they really understand that coming out here in these small
Well,
communities.
sure, they can get away with it.
You can score, and in
Yeah.
those big places, you think they wanna spend the money, they know that they're gonna be lawyered up and down. And here, they just
Yeah.
walk in
I mean,
and
That's
spread
right.
some cash around and they go.
and
That's
I
right.
guess in thinking about this and when you
I'll tell you,
think
it's,
with
I
your-
agree, I said it I said the same thing, but in a nicer way.
I know.
I'm thinking if the board considers under nuisance, quite often, a nuisance is after the fact. We get a complaint is generated, an investigation ensues, and then if we do find that there is a nuisance, then it must be abated. What we're talking about here, I think, is unfortunately, we already have some wind farms that are up and, you
And
know,
prevention.
if I go stick a sticker on them and tell them they gotta come down, they're gonna really laugh very hard at me. But, you know, when we're looking at prevention and all the moving forward, and maybe even putting a stop or halt, temporary halt, even if that, to the one in progress, I think it would have to come under the regulation. And we could be really stepping into a place that's not really in our jurisdiction. I don't know.
But making a recommendation
Unfortunately,
appropriate,
the
right?
state health department has not taken action that we have all asked them to take.
Exactly.
We've asked
They have
them
not. We know that,
to
yeah,
make sure
right.
that a full seeker review is done and that the public health impacts of wind turbines were studied before this was all allowed to do. Same as what we did with tattoo parlors and, sorry, they're not parlors anymore, and piercing shops. And instead of waiting for them to do it, we did it. Tobacco
But
21,
Chris,
we did
they
it.
have so many fish to fry out there. I mean, they've got a bazillion things going on out there.
Well,
I know, and there's a lot of, this is, you know, a lot of money, but really, they've got a lot on their plate. And until you step up and put this, and I'm sure just with us meeting tonight, it's going to be somewhat newsworthy that we're looking at the regulation of wind farms from a public health point of view. That immediately will put a shot across the bow of these people who are going to have to think a little bit about these projects that they're, and also the people out there who have people coming to them throwing cash at them. I mean, you might as well start the game and see what happens. I mean, it's a lot of
See where
work.
it leads.
I'm happy to look at all this for everybody, and just want to throw out a request from the county attorney's office that when we're looking at changing the sanitary code, in order to keep the good relationship that we have with the legislature, it would be great for us to put together a presentation or explanation to the committee with the legislature, so that when the bow is shot, when the shot is shot across the bow, the county executive knows what we're doing and why, and can explain it to the public. And, you know, with any luck, that parallel campaign to the legislature might help pass a county law if that's your ultimate objective also. So
True, very true.
I just would suggest that we put that, you know, in with your thoughts as we move forward.
Mhm.
Just kind of continue the goodwill with the legislature. It will help us continue to be progressive and aggressive as we go forward. They won't cut us off at the knees, in other words, to be, I guess, blunt about it, right?
Yeah. My knees bleed.
Well, true, although one has to do what's right, too.
I just want to make a comment about our county executive. On August 6th, we had a meeting in the county executive's office, and Chris was there, and Mark Stowe from Environmental Health, and I forget who all. But I was very, very much impressed and frankly surprised at the grasp that George Borrello has of this entire subject.
Much more than me.
I did not expect that. And he's on top of it.
Yes, right.
And as I said, he was at the forum
He won't be surprised.
in Buffalo. So I would, offer myself to be in contact with this group, with your office. And, I can provide some science from some of these internet items that I referred to. Also, what do you think about the Board of Health writing a letter of concern to town governments in the county? Say simply, without going into a lot of ghastly detail, but say simply that we are aware of certain public health aspects relating to industrial wind towers, and we want to express our concern for public health.
You're the Board of Health.
That goes
You
right
can
along
do-
with what we've been
That's
saying.
what I said. I make
Yeah.
a motion that we encourage a moratorium on industrial wind towers until the local municipalities can put together some sort of bylaws and establish guidelines for where they're built.
What?
We
And
can
that's a
form the
motion.
basis of that type of letter.
Yeah, that letter should include that
Yeah.
the health department is willing to assist them in looking at
Good.
the information we have and possible, at least, guidelines that they
Guidelines.
they should think about putting in place to protect themselves from just, what's going on right now.
Yeah, I mean, in reality, they could say we have them, it's 1,000 feet. We have our guidelines. So it's more,
What's 1.5
I mean,
miles?
in
100
reality,
feet?
Miles, 52.
you would think a moratorium would be in until research is sufficient to show there's no adverse health effects. Of course.
That's a very nebulous end, though. There's no end to that question when there's adequate evidence available.
That's right.
So-
Well,
If that
you
would
know,
happen, we wouldn't have been talking about e-cigarettes and everything else that we've talked about.
relative to that, what Chris just said, on page 1 here, under Dan Stapleton, item number 1, he stated that developers should have the burden to prove industrial wind towers are safe. The public should not have the burden of proving IWTs are not safe.
Yes. The tobacco industry saying that cigarettes were safe.
That's right.
Well, and the other thing, and I don't know, maybe Lynn, on this note, I just had another, terrible, I'm thinking off the top of my head, so I'm just terrible, this is all recorded. Just because the state is saying that there doesn't have to be a thorough environmental impact study for these wind farms to go up, could we as a county establish, that would be a local law, I believe.
But as long as our
That-
law is more stringent, not less stringent than the state, we
Right.
have the right to do that, if I'm not mistaken.
But I think that would have to be a local law passed by the legislature, not a Board of Health sanitary code amendment. But that could be another way to look at this. If we're all have been asking
Mhm.
the state now to do,
The,
the full environmental impact study.
The local law could be,
And they're
local
not.
law could be a lot harder though,
I don't know if we could locally.
more difficult for them to
Say
do
in
it.
Chautauqua County, you're gonna have to
Well-
do a thorough environmental impact study before you can install any wind farms.
Does anyone know if there's been any lawsuit challenging any of the existing farms under the failure to provide an environmental impact
I
statement?
just said there was one, no?
Either federally or state, I just don't know if there's a mechanism, I'm just talking off the top of my head, so okay, I'll look into that, because I don't know.
So I guess we have some avenues to
What
look
guidance?
into, some action steps from tonight.
we could advise.
What's
you
the
know, if there's
pathway
a-
to the regulation? Like if you were to treat it like the sewer issue where people had to come get permission in advance according to guidelines that Board of Health sets?
They would have to fill out an application.
How do we get those regulations into place, I guess?
We would have to come up with those
No, but we would
regulations.
amend
But do they have to get
sanitary code.
approved by?
No.
We would amend the sanitary code.
Right.
That would go to the state health department, who have to agree for that amendment to our sanitary code. If we were to put
Right.
something in our, if we were to say there should be a minimum setback of 2 miles, and the decibel level cannot be more than,
I see. So then it just gets approved by the state and then it's
Yes.
If they
in
approve
place.
it.
if they
Yeah.
approve it, yeah.
You know, for instance, and Dr. Kidder, I don't know.
I don't
if
think-
you've had-
I think
you've
they
had
would
Just
approve
adopt the European
Like
guidelines.
here's,
That's right.
like.
What is that?
I mean, there's
What are
no-
they?
it's
Is it
on
1.5
our section.
miles?
I think so.
1.5 miles, and
One
how
and a
I
about
think
half
it's
that?
from the
miles
property
and
line, not
35
from the
decibels.
house.
From the
Yeah.
property
Is
line.
the
Not from the
European.
structure.
That's right.
Yeah, yeah.
All right, well,
Well, this is heady stuff.
yeah, we got some other fun stuff we still have to talk about, so.
Shall we get our heads together in the near future? And
That sounds good, Tom.
Yeah, okay,
So there is no motion
okay.
at this time, that's right.
Thank you, Tom, for bringing us to this point here on this topic.
Well, I thank the public, you know, the people who are suffering.
Right.
Are we having any
Absolutely.
motions or not?
I don't really know if you need any.
So if we're gonna get together and
Well, there was talk about a letter to the municipalities
Yeah,
outlining the fact that we have concerns and that they should probably be looking at what regulations they have in place, local regulations that they have in place. Right, I mean, that's,
Although they probably would they look for the Board of Health to give them recommendations? That's the only thing. Would they know as
well, we
much as
could
we
put in a
know?
letter, though,
In
that.
terms of we've been learning a lot
We
over the
could put in a
past year.
letter that if they seek some guidance, we can give them some guidance as to what we know.
good idea. Would you like me to try my hand at drafting that and run it through you?
Perfect.
Okay.
Why not give them the guidance in the letter straight up?
Well, that we should, if we're gonna try to make an impact, otherwise it's just,
You know, that's
Making us
not a
feel
bad
better.
idea. Maybe you can say, the European standard
Mhm.
is 2 miles
Mhm.
and
1.5.
30, or 1.5 miles, I should say, and 35 or less
That's it.
decibels. That would be a reasonable
starting point.
suggestion for them to at least have that as a minimum requirement. Nothing wrong with putting that in there.
is
No.
it 35 or 50
35,
for in Europe?
I think so.
We can
New York
figure
is
that out.
45, isn't it?
Well, there's a difference between in the city and in a rural area.
Mhm.
Recommend for rural areas between 35 and 40, because it's a rural area where the noise level is generally a lot quieter
Hmm.
than in the city.
So
So
here-
And
there's-
it's
there's a
50 in the
difference.
city, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah.
But it's still the distance is the thing.
Yeah.
Okay, we have a
Okay.
way forward, I guess. Shall we move off that topic?
I'm sorry, I just wanted to say one more thing, sorry. I was just looking at some other local states. Rhode Island was one of the particular states that I looked at that had very specifics as far as all of the risks involved, and it was the Rhode Island Office of Energy Resources. I had to look it up real quick, but they use a formula that's 1.5 times the hub height plus the turbine diameter. That's what they use for calculating the setback. So 1.5 is their standard minimum miles, and then an additional feet calculating in the hub height with the turbine diameter. And they cite, it's right on their website, and they cite the reasons why they calculate that, and that's considering in the health effects of the sound, that the audible sound, infrasound, blade throw, ice throw, and fall.
Flicker.
And flicker.
Well, they're, clearly they're ahead of the game. Why is that? I mean, do they have these things? Somebody Googled it. Somebody must have Googled it. Yeah.
From what I could read, they were, it started with a lot of environmental impact studies was what started that, and then it became a health concern, and they set the Rhode Island set the standards based off of previous environmental studies that led into findings of impacts on humans.
Rhode Island, that's the first I've heard of anything from Rhode Island. Great, thank you. Okay, we can move on here to item 6, nurse-family partnership.
Yes, we can. We have with us tonight Kathy Burgess. She's the nursing supervisor over both of these programs, and I've asked her to tell you a little bit about them. I think it's important for the board to know the new initiatives we've undertaken in the last few years in response to a lot of what we've seen in child welfare, and how we have to really take a healthy preventative approach and do what we can to improve the health of our moms and babies, and in particular what we've seen with the opioid epidemic. Kathy's done a phenomenal job getting these programs started and maintained, and she'll tell you about them. This is also very important, and I'm hoping the board takes to heart the good work that we're doing here, because both of these programs are not mandated. We are coming into budget hearing time, and there's a local share component to both of these programs, which that means they're on the chopping block possibly as the legislature looks to make cuts. And I will fight as hard as I can to make sure that doesn't happen. But there could be a time when it means that we need additional support. This is true public health at its best, and we can't allow these evidence-based programs to go away. Kathy?
Thank you. So first we started our community health worker program back in about 2012, and it's a peer education program. The community health workers go through training with New York State DOH, and they go into the homes and work with high-risk pregnant women, providing education, support, making referrals. They can work with the mom at any point in her pregnancy, and we can take referrals even after delivery. So sometimes we get referrals from the OB, it might be CPS, it could be a social worker, it could be the guidance counselor at school. We do get a lot of referrals from the school. It could be WIC, so we get a lot of referrals. But for the community health worker program, which is under our maternal and infant community health collaborative grant, otherwise known as the MITCH grant, they can work with these moms, like I said, through any point in their pregnancy up until the child's a year old. And they make usually monthly visits. They're usually an hour, half hour to an hour. They can be more frequently depending on the needs. We do all kinds of assessments when we meet with the moms, but it is a voluntary program. They don't have to participate, but usually they want to, because once they do, they tend to stay with the program. We've had a lot of girls graduate the program. So if they start with them early in their pregnancy, if that referral comes from the OB, we're working with them until that child's a year old. So moms like when we work with the children as well. So we do developmental screenings on the baby, making sure they're reaching their developmental milestones. If they're not, provide mom with activities, provide her with support, show her how to do floor time, show her how to do tummy time. Sometimes it's helping them find that clean, safe area on the floor so they can do these things. It's starting with the basics. But that's what we try and do with our moms. Caseloads for our workers is between 25 and 30 moms. Maybe that doesn't seem like a lot, but with some of our high-need moms, that's a big caseload. I have 4 on the team currently. In 2015, we started with Nurse Family Partnership. We have 4 nurses plus myself with a caseload, and we all went to Denver, Colorado for the training. It's an amazing evidence-based program. We work specifically with first-time moms, and they have to enroll less than 28 weeks in their pregnancy, and we can work with them till the child's 2 years old. And we have had a lot of moms graduate that program. So they're staying with it very early in their pregnancy, so we're talking almost 3 years. So these moms really like the program. And I do have some success stories I want to share with you, because we've really had some great successes, and I wanted you to know about them. But with those programs, with both programs, they do need to be Medicaid or WIC eligible. And we do a lot of different screenings. I mentioned a couple, especially the ages and stages. That's a great one. But with mom, we do screen for anxiety, we screen for depression, we do home safety checks, we do drug and alcohol screens. I'm probably forgetting a couple, but.
Do lead? Do you do lead screen?
We do, well, yes, we do. And then we also make referrals to environmental health too, so that they can come into the home and do that type too. We make a lot of referrals. We also focus some of our education on healthy birth spacing and contraception, of course. We try and make that connection to services so we can get them the long-acting reversible contraception. There's all kinds of education, safe sleep. We had a Stop the Prop campaign, so we would identify the risks of bottle propping. Car seat safety, we do have a child passenger safety technician on staff. The side effects of smoking, we do infant CPR and choking, all kinds of great education. The other things we do with these programs is we started a breastfeeding hotline. Some of you might know that there's not a lot of breastfeeding support if you are not eligible for WIC. Once you're discharged from the hospital, moms run into problems, there's nobody to call. And we started this hotline, we started a Facebook page, it's like a closed chat room for moms, and we've been very successful with those. All of our nurses with Nurse Family Partnership are also trained lactation consultants, and we have taken those services into the home. So if we have a mom that has trouble with latch, or baby's not gaining weight, slow gain, doctor wants another set of eyes on that baby, we'll work with mom. We'll go into the home, and it might take one visit and she's got it. It might take several visits, but we're working with those moms, and I just love that program because it's been so successful. We also have a great coalition. A lot of different community agencies are on that coalition. We met yesterday, and I believe there was 24 in attendance, and we made we had some great discussions. So there's a great collaborative effort there. I talked to you about the child passenger safety technician. We also do a Moms Quit program, so any moms that are smoking during their pregnancy, we provide them with education and support and the incentive of free diapers to quit smoking. We've had some great success stories with that. And it's not just mom, it could be dad, father the baby's in the home, he's smoking, we'll provide him with support as well. Could be grandma, whoever. We also are in the jail providing these same services, so we can provide education whether they're a first-time mom. We'll have the nurse go into the jail if they're not a first-time mom, but they still would need the support services. We're sending a community health worker there. We also do ward rounds, and that just means we have a nurse go into both delivering hospitals 3 days a week to provide education on that breastfeeding support hotline that they can call, and to see if we've missed them somewhere. We can make that referral to the MITCH program at that point. And also, we just recently started the CAPTA program. We did get some funding. CAPTA, if you're not familiar, stands for Child Abuse or Neglect Prevention and Treatment Act. And we have a nurse working closely with moms, working closely with CPS, I should say, for any mom that tests positive at the time of delivery. So
Positive for drugs.
Positive for drug, substance use disorder. Maybe they're in treatment, but maybe they're also using another substance, or it could be marijuana, but it could also be meth, it could be heroin, coke, whatever. If she tests positive, we're gonna be there. We can make the visit along with CPS or after, but just to support mom, let her know that we're there to help get CPS out of the picture. We want to, encourage her or support her, make her aware that, we're not here to take this baby away. We want to help you. We want to support you. We want to connect you to resources, make sure you're getting the necessary help that you need. And educate her on breastfeeding. If she is in treatment and she's not currently using, we want her to breastfeed. We want her to be successful and give her that chance. So we've had a lot of success. It gives me goosebumps. I love that program because these clients, I don't want to say these clients, but the moms that have been identified that qualify for those services are so receptive to that education. They want to know more. They want to talk about it, and it's working very well.
This really is, how many years ago now when I took over social services, the goal really was to have a public health approach to child welfare. And now we're really seeing this when you're pairing up, the Child Protective Services caseworker and a public health nurse, and you're going in together on these families. Mm-hmm. And we literally just started this with 2 weeks?
2 weeks.
And we've had 10 women, 10 positive tox babies and women in 2 weeks.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
But they are engaging with the nurse. It's great when we can meet them where they're at in the hospital at that time, because once they're discharged, that connection's so hard. But they're reaching back out to the nurse, so it's working. They're asking questions. They want her to come back. They want her to come to the home and see them. So it's working very
great.
well. I'm excited about it.
And the hospitals are
Oh
right
my
in there
gosh,
with
they're
you,
so,
right?
they're
I
so
hope.
happy to have us there.
Yeah.
Yes.
Terrific.
And the referral can be made after birth, not just during the prenatal period?
Correct, and maybe I should explain that because it's not, we will also set them up with a community health worker because at that point of delivery, say they didn't go for prenatal care or we just didn't connect with them during the pregnancy, so they wouldn't qualify for nurse family partnership. It's a special kind of program, so they don't need to qualify for the nurse at that point under this CAPTA grant.
Oh, they qualify, it's just unfortunately, it's a bad urine that qualifies them.
Well,
Yeah.
right. So, a couple success stories. I've changed names, I've changed a few things. I mean, I'm gonna use a name, but just so you know. So Laura was referred to Nurse Family Partnership by her OB early in her pregnancy, and after multiple attempts to contact her, because that can always be a challenge, the phone number doesn't work as soon as we get the referral, or the address is different, or whatever. An appointment was finally made to meet with her at her friend's apartment. Laura was homeless, her family lived out of state, where she fled due to a history of sexual abuse and domestic violence. She dropped out of high school after completing 11th grade. She had a history of mental health issues and substance abuse. She came to Chautauqua County hoping to start a new life here and lived with her sister for a short time before being thrown out. Laura had limited access to food and she often ate at the soup kitchen. She was depressed and complained of a lot of pain in her mouth. Laura was great at keeping her NFP appointments. She is established with a mental health provider and takes her medication as prescribed. Laura was referred to a dentist and was able to have her 15 cavities filled. She no longer had pain in her mouth. Laura lives with her boyfriend, who is not the father of the baby. Laura has SNAP in place and continues to keep her WIC appointments. She began the GED program 3 months after enrolling in NFP and has successfully completed her exam. She delivered a healthy baby girl and breastfed for the first 3 weeks after stating early in her pregnancy that she had absolutely no interest in breastfeeding. The nurse home visitor was able to be present for the delivery, and Laura was very grateful as her boyfriend had to work and she had no other support at her side. And she's bonding well with the baby at this time. An NFP nurse had been working with a first-time mom who moved to Chautauqua County from Puerto Rico back in March of 2018 when she was 21 weeks along in her pregnancy. She spoke limited English and was living at the Days Inn with her husband. They had applied for temporary assistance, SNAP, and WIC, and neither of them were working. During their time with Nurse Family Partnership, we were able to provide education, connect them to services, and assist with adequate housing. Nurse Family Partnership was able to provide her with an infant car seat as they were unable to afford one. The family is currently renting a mobile home, which the client maintains. The husband's employed, they own a vehicle and are off temporary assistance. The client is also speaking more English and an interpreter is no longer needed for the visit. The family was again able to purchase the next size car seat for their growing infant. And if I could, I just wanted to share, I have a couple more, but I'm just gonna share one more. Carrie, age 19, was referred to Nurse Family Partnership by her OB. She was diagnosed with depression and bipolar disorder at age 13 and was using meth at the age of 17. She dropped out of high school after her junior year. She was admitted for treatment in Buffalo and is now in recovery. Both of her parents currently use and often drop in to eat and sleep at her apartment. Her mother was evicted from her own apartment and her father lives out of town but comes and goes from the area. Carrie works nights and walks to her job as she does not have a license. Father of the baby has been in and out of jail for domestic violence and drug use. Carrie gave birth to a healthy baby boy and she breastfed for 5 months. She currently is using Nexplanon for her birth control and is receiving mental health services. She is co-parenting with the father of the baby but no longer in a relationship with him. She joined TEEN, which is the Teen Education Motherhood Program, and graduated high school this past June and is currently attending JVC. She saved enough money to buy a vehicle and last week passed her road test. She continues to work at her same place of employment, but is now working full-time days. Her little boy is right on track with his developmental milestones, and she's doing great as a first-time mom.
That's a good one for sure.
Yeah. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kathy.
Very nice.
Yeah, just because we are going into the budget, I'm not going to give you this long, drawn-out director's report of everything we've got going on, but right now, the county executive's tentative budget that will be presented to the legislature is showing about a $600,000 increase in local share costs for 2020 over to calendar year 2019. It's a 1.3% increase in our budget for all of our public health programs. That doesn't include preschool special education, which is always usually the biggest increase that we have there. I don't know exactly what will happen with our budget, when we get to the hearings. I may be sending email SOSs out to the board Because it really is, you know, it is the Board of Health's responsibility to ensure that we're able to do the public health work that we say we're going to do, and to uphold the sanitary code and the public health laws and rules and regulations that we're charged with, and we cannot do that with adequate staffing.
But we know that the program that she's in now, these children, if they weren't saved at this point, would end up costing the
Yes.
society
Yes.
thousands upon thousands
Millions.
of dollars. So spending the money now has been proven time and time again that you save the money down the road.
Mhm.
But
Yep.
it's very hard to prove that to an elected politician who's
Prevention
interested in
is-
cutting the budget.
Prevention's always been that way.
Yes.
Yeah, the change in public health law, which decreased the action level for childhood lead poisoning from 15 micrograms to 5 micrograms, is putting a much greater strain on resources for both environmental health and the care coordination component that we're mandated to do. We have asked for just an additional sanitarian in the budget and are trying to absorb the other duties with staff and switching some other of our full-time equivalents around throughout our entire huge department. So there's an increase from that as well, you know, but this is work that we have to do. So if, I will say I've been here 11 years now. And I don't normally come to the Board of Health and request your assistance when it comes to budget time. But I feel very strongly that we are as lean of a department as we can possibly be. And, you know, you do have some say in what we do and how we're able to do it. So I may be calling on you if I need to.
Yeah, you know, I'd be happy to go to committee or to the legislature. 10 or so years ago, I served on the Roger Tory Peterson Institute Board. And this may not sound germane, but I think it will. As a board member, I worked there one day a week. I staffed the front desk, answered the phone, helped people make purchases in the store, and so on. And one day a woman came in and she said, "What is natural history anyway?" So I took her around the corner, and around the corner there was a big bookshelf, took up much of the wall. And I said, "You see all those titles? Those were all books that were Roger Tory Peterson had a hand in. His type of field guides. He didn't write them all by any means, but they were all that kind of field guide. There were about 50 different titles. And I said, that's natural history. And when I think of public health, there's a parallel here. I mean, there are so many facets to public health. And, you know, we talked about lead, we've talked about industrial wind turbines, we've talked about women and mothers and infants. It's astounding what has to be covered under this, and I think we really need to make a statement to the county about the importance of our citizens.
Right, and I see it getting worse in the sense of the need. The other side of lead is substandard housing in the county.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, in a way, I think we need to bring it up in our Board of Health meetings in the future about what it is that we can make recommendations for, or amend the sanitary code, or enforce certain aspects of it to help. I mean, we don't have the budget really to do, I don't think, what's needed in terms of getting out there and making a connection between the lead toxicity in children, which is high in our county, and the substandard housing issues that are not being addressed by other groups. So that'll come at another time, but I think I think our work is going to get more complex.
But the other side of that is what's happening in the schools with those kids.
Exactly.
Their costs are going.
The special education
and
needs are incredible.
counseling and kids that are hyperactive and kids that
Exactly.
have special needs because of
Absolutely.
subtle changes in their developmental,
Right.
Their development because of lead toxicity, even at low levels.
Right.
And so it's pervasive.
Absolutely.
And if you don't address it at the level of prevention, you pay for it 100 times
Forever.
over, as you
Yeah.
said. But the other,
And I-
But it's very hard to be proactive. Everybody's reactive.
That's
It's-
exactly right.
You have to be proactive, and that doesn't get you all the kudos.
Yeah.
Well, for I don't know how many years now since the opioid epidemic really has come to light with our positive talks babies and that, which was 2014, 15, we've been dealing with this. And every year I've said at budget time, you're going to see trickle-down effects for this. You're going to see an increased cost in child welfare, maternal child health, early intervention, preschool special education, because this is what we're going to have as impacts. And now here we are, because those are the areas of our budget that we have seen increases. Temporary assistance is down, safety net's down, that's all great. That means our economy is doing good and we have fewer people on public assistance. But right where we figured we would be seeing the issues, that's where we're seeing them.
That's it.
20 years ago, Buffalo Children's was showing 15% positive tox screens in their deliveries. These were suburban, this wasn't even the inner city stuff, where you were getting 30% tox screens. And now we're seeing it here because we've not exactly kept our eye on the ball here, and I just never thought it would come here.
Commonest referral to children's from our newborns at Brooks is withdrawal.
Yeah.
For sure.
The other
So-
place on the public health side, in addition to special ed and maternal child health, where we have an increase in environmental, is coroner program. And that, we're having increased costs for autopsies, and also transportation that goes along with that to the Erie County Medical Examiner's Office. And we put through a resolution through Human Services and Audit Control this morning to move around some money. Fortunately, we had some money in the safety net account that we could move to cover the increased cost for 2019 so far for coroners. But we were projecting increased costs for 2020. And I am getting some pushback on that. So far, year-to-date, we've had 196 coroner cases and 61 autopsies to go with that. So that's about a 31% autopsy rate. And as far back as like 2010 that I've looked at, it used to be about a 4 or 5% autopsy rate.
Does every overdose have to have a
Yes.
postmortem?
Yeah, that's a lot. And and it really.
It's very costly.
I told the legislature when we as public health agreed to take over the coroner program and try to make it right, it wasn't going to be less expensive. But we were going to do it right, we were gonna follow public health law, and that really is what we're doing. And we've got a really smooth running program going now that I really think can be a model across the state. We actually have policies and procedures. We have rules, we just aren't handing autopsy reports out. We aren't, there really is some structure that's put around the program now, and our coroners have the safety equipment and that they need to do their jobs. And they're all fully electronic now too, which is great. So I will say this to the legislature at budget time, and hopefully you'll support me. If they want to take the program back and think they can run it better, and or think I'm not going to do it according to public health law, they can have it back.
Well, having served in the legislature for a total of 3 terms, I can tell you that, first of all, making budget decisions is difficult. Secondly, however, it's very, very important that people supporting a particular part of the budget go to the legislature and speak to the importance. And I think that's really what we need to do here, so.
Well, will you let us know then if you feel that you'd like this to be at a certain place at a certain time? Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
Phew.
That completes our agenda. Is there anything anyone would like to add at this point?
The only thing I'd like to say is I'm thrilled that Dr. Betsy Kidder is going to be joining the board as a member next month.
He did.
So-
Yes, Dr. Kidder's appointment was unanimously approved at last night's Human Services Committee meeting. So hopefully there should be no glitch that she won't be approved by the full legislature at next Wednesday evening's meeting. So then hopefully
Just
she'll
make
be
sure
a
you
full
fill out
voting
the
member then.
forms correctly.
I know. I think I did already, but
Yeah,
hopefully
okay,
that
so-
was.
Sherry will be on, there's more.
She'll
Yeah.
do it.
There's more, but Sherry will take care
Or
of it.
she'll get one of those nasty grams that I did, you know, threatening 25,000 civil fine or something.
You mean the financial disclosure?
Yeah, I left my address off.
No,
Yeah, and that got
Oh,
me.
wow.
likely story.
Yeah.
Well, welcome, Betsy.
Glad
Yes,
to be
we
a
are
part of that
thrilled to
group.
have you. You see how much fun we have.
I know. Right up my.
Yes, it is.
Any last items? All right, entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second?
You
It
guys
needs
don't
to be
wanna
second, we could be here a long time.
You don't
Second.
have to second
don't?
the
You
don't
motion.
have to second
In
the
a
motion
for
to adjourn.
Oh, I don't know.
I'll
what
second
Robert's
anyway.
rules.
All right, good, I didn't
Yes,
know that.
you don't
Thank
need to
you.
second
I
the
think,
motion.
I feel
We're
better.
adjourned.
We're all in favor.
Yay.
Before you leave, I read an interesting article on wind turbines and birds.
Yes.
It was in a reputable
Tallett.
magazine.
I haven't seen you in a
There are
while.
about 200,000 to 1 million birds killed every year by wind turbines.